Hi everybody. Thanks for coming to Inspired by Women. I'm Mei. This is our lovely hostess, Judy G, who has graciously provided this wonderful space for creative thinking and community. And we'll be sharing this panel of wonderful, active women from this community. So thanks for being here. Judy, did you want to say a few words about?
I'll say a few words.
Yes.
I have a weak voice, so I'm going to use a mic.
Okay.
Not a lot of people. But, thanks, Mei-Ling, for doing this event. And this is my gallery studio. This is where I practice painting, and that table is where I teach. And next weekend and the following weekend, I'm doing open studio, so you can come back and see what I'm working on. And interestingly, I'm working on a series called Men in Nature. And it's sort of about how do we correct the system of men and women, and how do we get them more in touch with nature and make a healthier world. And if Felipe were here, I'd say, you know, that's your, whatever that's called, directive from me. So I appreciate what Felipe is doing and what all of you are doing, and nice to meet you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy. So this is Lonnie Faulkner of Equity Transit, Paula Hernandez, historic strike organizer and the inspiration for this event, actually, and Vanessa Quiroz-Carter on Watsonville City Council and lifelong residents. Yeah, so I'm just going to throw questions to you, and all of you can answer. Or not, totally up to you, no pressure. But my first one is, what were your core beliefs about women and power when you were growing up? Did those beliefs change over time?
First of all, I was born and raised here in Watsonville. There's a family of 13. I have 13 brothers and sisters, my mom and dad. My dad's too proud, never got help from the government. We picked strawberries, string beans, my brothers lettuce. But my dad gave us all the choice. Go to school and become someone, get a good job, or stay working and help the family and buy your car and what you need. Well, of course, when he said buy a car, I said, okay, I'll keep working. That was like then. But then as I grew up and got married, I changed because my husband was going to be too dominant, getting my check and this and that and buying what he wants. And when I started, and he said, and I called him on it, and he said, well, I'm the money maker, I'm the one that gets more money. So then I thought, okay, so that's how it is, huh? Well, guess what? I started working. I started climbing up just to make more money, to be my own person, to have my own money and to provide for my family, my growing family that I had, which Felipe was already born at that time. So now I started getting better jobs, better everything, and then I said, okay, I make double the money of you do in 1 year. So you know what? This is it. I'll help you pay the bills, happies, but I'm keeping the rest of it to do what I need to do, to put in the bank account, to provide for my kids what they need. And so that's the way it was. He didn't like it, but it's okay. At the end, he folded his hands. Okay, whatever. Just half with the bills. That's good. So then, that's the way it was. And then the strike. There was rumors about the strike. I was working at the cannery at that time. Rumors about there's going to be a strike. There's going to be a strike. Oh, geez, I wonder what's going on. So I investigated. They wanted to cut $1.50 off of everybody that had brackets, bracket 1 to 5. Did the office people get a cut? No, they got an increase. Did the office people get benefit cuts, health benefit cuts? No, they probably got a better benefit plans. So this wasn't fair, and I told the people, look, this is what's happening. This is why the rumor is that we're going to go on strike. This is what's happening. Do you want this? I do not want this. If we're going to go on a strike, it's going to be everybody's going to get a cut, not just us. Everybody's going to get cut from the health benefits. I personally want to keep the health benefits. I don't really care about the money so much, but yeah, I know we all do, because really that's what it is. But that's the way it should be. It should be to be office people also, not just us. So I am going to go on a strike. If the Teamster calls for a strike, I'm in it. And since I was a floor leader at that time, and I was very well respected and liked because when you're running a crew of 100 people, you have to be nice to the people when you tell them, you know what? You don't say, oh, I want you over here. Go work with it. No. You go up to the next person working to you and you say, Mija, I need your help over here. Can you help me sort over here because we're getting a lot of B grade. And so that's the way you tell people. You don't boss them like that. You tell them you need their help and then they will help you. That's how I was earned their respect from them. So when it came to the strike, they trusted me. And that's how we got organized, that the people, when we all walked out, all those people that I talked to. And that's what started me becoming more empowered, I would say that. And I talked to the Teamsters local, the 912 also. It was Sergio Lopez and Leon and Santos. And they sent me to New York because they thought that I could be the one that could have a voice to talk to Mr. Presser, which was the union Teamsters big guy over there in New York. So we went over there. I went over there and then we talked in a big assembly. I think there was like maybe 5,000 people there and I had to get up and talk. I was trembling. And I told them that what was going on. And so then they said that, I even stayed at his penthouse up there where you could see that green building. Is it Rockefeller? He let me stay in one of those rooms. And so it was amazing. It was really good. But then they talked in contact with Sergio Lopez, and they said they were going to give us more money on a weekly basis. So that was a good thing. It was only a 3-day thing. And so when we came back, my horoscope's a Cancer. You know, Cancer is sentimental, water and thing, and a nurturer. So when I told Sergio, not just that $50-something check is good enough. I need to make sure that these people get a bag of food, that they get clothes, that they get vegetables. So he says, that's a good idea, we need that. So me and, we hooked up with Lydia Lerma, she's from Watsonville, and I'm from Dick Shaw. And so we hooked up together, and we have the mutual feelings. Okay, so we started going out to ranches. I went to ranches of squash, tomato, and all over the place asking for handouts, you could say, for the strikers. We brought bins of food over there to this warehouse on Walker Street. And I went to the stores at Safeway, Nob Hill, all these other stores, and we got breads and stuff that was almost going to expire, but they were still good. We got them over here. We went to Food Bank. They got semis for us, food. And then we went all the way to San Jose when they donated money because we had to open a trust bank account to people have donate money for us. So when the things that when we saw this, what we could make a bag of and what was lacking, we had to go to San Jose to talk to this warehouse people that were selling canned goods at a low price, but because we were strikers, they would even lower it less. And so we went there and we made a deal and we got all this food, we bagged all these boxes. They weren't bags, these were boxes. You know those boxes, banana boxes? We filled it up. Every week the strikers would come and get their box. And because to me that was important, that that check is not gonna last long. I mean, come on. And so we went to Pepsi-Cola, Coca-Cola, they gave us all kinds of waters and stuff, and we filled up those boxes, and the ranchers were so good. The lettuce people gave us lettuce, and it was all good.
Thank you, Paula. Does anybody want to follow that? So I'll just restate the question for anyone who wants to jump in. What were your core beliefs about women in power when you were growing up? And did those beliefs change over time?
I think for me, it's interesting because I grew up in a very interesting household. My father grew up during the Depression, and so he had a whole construct around growing up in the Depression era where you come together as a family and a community, and that was really important. And that whole coming together as a community is kind of like the stream or the river or the base that underlines my whole perspective of how, and that gets kind of onto other questions as we go forward. But when I was young, I had this like dichotomous growing up situation. My father, on the one hand, you know, I was like the son he never had. He had 4 daughters. And so he'd wake me up in the morning. I grew up in San Francisco, but then when I was still very young, in middle school, we moved to the country. We called it the country. And so we had our 5 acres, and I basically grew up on a farm and worked hard. So at 6:30 in the morning, my dad would knock on the door, and I would be out digging, literally digging irrigation ditches and moving rocks, and it was hard work. And by lunchtime, noon or 12:30, your muscles are just aching, and I was just a kid. And so I was like the son he never had. And we do hard work, we do building, we build our barn, I'd throw, a couple ton of hay. So I was always very involved in that, and it's definitely a part of who I am, being with the earth and growing and having that part of my life. But it was interesting at the same time, and I think this speaks to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't share this side of their growing up, is a lot of us live with cyclical generational trauma. And what that means is that there's a lot of stuff that happens, and my father had some alcoholism, and he also had some severe anger issues. So he was, on the one hand, this amazing man, really brilliant. People would say to me, your dad's like one of the smartest men I've ever met. He could do whatever. He built houses, he would build instruments, he could even sew a dress, he made a guitar, I mean, he could whatever, he built airplanes, he could do whatever he wanted to do. So he was amazing. And on the other hand, he had this dark side that, when he was young, when he was 18, his head was crushed in by a horse, and so he had a metal skull. And for those of you who are aware of, like, the football players and people who go through military, you actually have brain issues that result through a long time that result in the anger. And so I had this dichotomous growing up, where on the one hand, my father challenged me to be, like a guy. I could do whatever any other gal could do, and I felt strong, and I would jump on my horse or build a thing. But on the other hand, I had this other personality in my family who was the same person, and when he would, it was like this light switch, he would get triggered, and then he would rage for 2 or 3 hours. And this personality, then it was, you're just a female, and you don't think logically, you're just like all other women, and you're just going to go out and get pregnant, and it was this huge negative aspect of my growing up. And it was very dichotomous. All through college had that. So part of me was, I had a belief system, like in high school, for example. In high school I said, I'm not taking typing because secretaries take typing, I'm going to be a scientist. Right, so I had already decided I was going to be a certain kind of thing. But actually that bit me later on, because typing, now my husband types 100 words, 70 to 100 words a minute, and it's great. I wish I'd taken typing now. But the embodiment of who I was in the world was really suppressed by my upbringing, right? Because the minute I tried to shine in my life, my dad was constantly putting me down. It was, I used to study classical opera, and when I go to do a concert competition, it was, an hour and a half of belittlement and tears and how I'm a bad person. It's this dichotomy, right? So I was always pushing through despite that, and yet the embodiment of who I was allowed to be at some level, some subconscious level, was suppressed, right? And so it's this give-take, this give-take. You can be anything you want, but you're still just this. And I think it's the foundation for that give and take as we grow as adults. And I share that, not at all to, there's no like, oh, woe is me. It's like, can I be a representative for other people? Because so many people go through this varying cyclical generational trauma. To not be afraid, and to hear your fears and all those conflicts that are happening inside emotionally and the subconscious, that oftentimes you don't actually realize that it happened in the way it did, that it's going to affect your next generation until you're about 50 years old. And you wake up and you go, oh, I'm kind of like forwarding my issues onto my children in a different way that I didn't recognize, even though I said, I'm never going to do the thing. You may not do the thing, but you may do something else. And so for me, that question of core beliefs has just been, it's really about taking who I am, but then always giving myself permission to, it's questioning and moving forward. Questioning, refining, and moving forward. So am I doing the right thing? I think I am. Am I making the right choices? What are other choices I could be making? And then moving forward. And then I know we talk a lot about fears that come up in our lives, and we all have fears. How do we push through those fears to be the embodiment of who we see ourselves as? Like for me, it was like, I see myself as I'm a nurturer, a mother, a caregiver, and also connected with the earth. And a community, someone that brings the community together. That's really important, because to me, we will not succeed unless we come together as a community. That's our strength, that's our superpower. That's how we change the world, is coming together with each other and recognizing our weaknesses. And, oh, this is your weakness. I actually happen to have a strength there. I'm going to jump in, I'm going to help you. And I have a weakness, and you're going to jump in, and you're going to help me. And then we become a superpower together. So I think I've gone from being me-focused, that's my change, to being us-focused.
Thank you, Lauren.
I'm sitting here listening to the questions and I'm trying to process, like, how do I even begin to answer this question? I guess you need to know that my parents put me in beauty pageants. That's a good place to start. And my family always really valued looks. My family is very traditional, machismo. They didn't like come out and say it, but there were like things like the men always get served first, the women do the dishes, the men don't do anything. And so there were just these little subtleties within my family that were just expected. I grew up with my parents, and then my parents split. And my dad was just very domineering and didn't, want my mom to get educated, didn't want my mom to pursue any of her dreams other than being a wife and mother. And that was something that I think contributed to their split, and I went on to live with my grandma. And my grandma has a second grade education. Education wasn't super valued in my family. It was like about the family. Like you have family, you have kids, that's the expectation. And so there were just a lot of this like undercurrent of gender roles and expectations, and I wasn't encouraged to like follow my dreams or anything. I was expected to marry young and have children and all of that, and that really was never. That's not what I wanted, and it's still not really what I want. And it's sort of hard for my family, I think, to wrap their heads around it, because it's just so ingrained within us and ingrained within our culture and our family. And it's like a moral failing. Like, I'm in my 30s, I have no children, and I always get like, why don't you have children? All my cousins have kids, and it's just, there are these really strong expectations that when you deviate from them, it's still, I went to Berkeley, I have a master's degree, I have all these achievements, and it still falls short because I don't have children. So we have these really, really firm gender roles that I think, I don't think that my family means them to be there, but they're there. And I also grew up in the 90s, which was like the girl power, the girl power movement was in the 90s in full swing. We had the Spice Girls, we had all these powerful women. And one of my aunts, she would subscribe me to these like feminist girl magazines, and that really shaped me. And I think that really sort of changed my thinking and made me want to pursue things and made me see the world in a different way. And I think there was still this undercurrent, even though we had like girl power and all these things, there's still this like really strong undercurrent of The feminine is just something that's, you know, it's not as serious and it's very dismissed and it's not celebrated. And when I was 9 years old, my mom let me watch this movie, and I'll talk about the movie anytime I get a chance. Tu Wong Fu, Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. And I saw that movie as a little kid, and I think like as a little kid, it, you know, it's about drag queens, and it was really gender expression and playing with gender, and that sort of blew my mind as a kid. And of course I loved it because I had been in the pageant world and loved all the glitz and gold and all of that. But the movie is like about accepting yourself and being loved for who you are and not, you know, giving into these expectations. And so I saw that at 9, and I probably shouldn't have seen that at 9, but I did. And yeah, it just sort of opened up a whole new way of thinking for me. And you know, I always have loved drag. It's just because they celebrate the feminine in drag, and I know that there's people contest that, but for me, that's what I see. And we don't often have this like celebration of femininity, right? And it's more, even within like pageantry and things like that, the woman is an object. She's not a person, right? And what I love about drag is that it just kind of deconstructs all this stuff, and it's a performance, right? Gender's a performance. And when I was in grad school, I was reading a lot of Judith Butler, and I was reading a lot of gender and performance, and my thesis was about, it was about technology and gender, specifically AI and gender, and you know, it gave me the courage to sort of play with my own gender, and I came to school one day, and I was dressed very masculine, and people were like, what? And people kind of lost their minds because they were used to me dressing in dresses and, you know, being all pretty and everything. And I was like, you know what? I don't feel like being pretty. I don't want to be pretty. Pretty's not the rent that I pay. That's not my quote. That's someone else's quote. I can't think of who it is. But, you know, and I think it's still, gender is still something that I'm sort of getting used to and like learning about. And getting comfortable with, and my family still places a lot of emphasis on looks. Like they always say like, oh, you're so pretty, and I'm like, I'm also smart, and I'm also really strong, and I'm also, you know, because I want my, you know, I want my nephew to hear that. My sister's pregnant, she's gonna have a little girl, and I want her to hear that when she's here. But you know, learning to value other things other than like the expectations, I think the 90s, the girl groups in the 90s, and you know, those little magazines that I read, those little feminist girl magazines, and I think really that Tu Wong Fu, like those things fundamentally changed me and like shaped me, and made me sort of reevaluate and see a lot of the sexist stuff that went into my own family.
Thank
you.
Yeah, please, pleine.
I just want to honor that perspective of the feminine and the masculine, because I've done a lot of work around the feminine in the masculine and the masculine in the feminine. But I've always been a very strong woman, and yet I'm a woman. And I want to be valued as a strong, intelligent woman and appreciated. And so I appreciate that perspective.
When did you first realize you could help other people by advocating together? And what was that experience like? Sure.
Okay, during that strike, Watsonville City Council didn't help us, even though we went out there. They didn't really do much. I was disappointed, and so that was fine. Letters to the editor from me. When the strike finished and everything, I thought, okay, this has to change. I am Paula Hernandez. I am going to become something different. I was a crew leader. So I pushed my way up to being a floor leader. I pushed my way to being a supervisor. I pushed my way up to taking a man's job, being a supervisor. That's what I did. The people in the office realized that I could actually get people to respect me and do as I say, how they want it, in a nice way. So they learned that I could do it, not the guys, not the men. I took the men's job. The other people were saying, look at her, she thinks she's a man. Well, you know what, I'm getting a man's wage. And so, and then when that happened and it was there, and I told the ladies, you know what, you can do it too. You have a good, strong voice. You can become a floor leader. I'll help you, I'll guide you. So guess what? I got 4 people to learn to be floor leaders and crew leaders. But when I was young also, I taught 5 people how to drive a car. So I already had it in me that I could teach people. I was 14, I was already teaching people how to drive a car. But anyway, so I got those people that were talking about me, that I wanted to be a man's job and do this and that. I taught them how to scale up too. And they became good floor leaders. And then I wanted more. I wanted to go into the office because I saw that the people were really hurting. They were compensation, and I needed to do something. There was too much workman's comp. So I wanted to get into, because I went to Oxnard to take classes on supervisory. I had to take my own time and go over there and take lessons to become a supervisor. And then I went into safety vocalization about the OSHA, all those things, and I learned it. I went into, I implemented the, what was it? Safety manager, safety coordinator / safety coordinator. Well, I wanted to help the people, so I went to the hardest job, a man right there, picking up boxes and turning around, putting into pallets. And I asked the man, and I kind of helped him. I says, this is very hard. What do you think we can do better so that you can not twist your back so much? Because that's where compensation was coming from, by the way. And he says, you know what, Paula? If you could get a belt coming from there, get it here, and so I just have to go like this and not be twisting my back, that would be great. You know what? I'm going to try and do it, and guess what? I'm going to try and get you 3 days free paid. So then that's where my compensation was all kind of a twisting around. So we did that. I called the mechanic, the head mechanic, hey, come here, can we do this? Is it possible to do this sliding belt here and have this person right here just have the pallet here? And he goes, well, we have this and that. I know, but he gets caught up and he has to go over there and then untwist it and then come back over here. He goes, you know what? We can try it. Let's see if we can try it. How much do you think it'll cost? And because we had a budget, I said, you know what? We can do it. So we did it. And that was there, that no more workman's compensation. And not only that, when I went to other lines and they worked 8 hours in this thing, and I told them, you know what, this is too hard to be doing 8 hours. You know what, we're going to change. We're going to change. You're going to do 2 hours here, sorting, 2 hours weighing, 2 hours packing, and 2 hours doing something else. But we're not going to do 8 hours no more. I'm changing this. This is not right. So we started changing things around. Since now I'm a safety coordinator, almost to become a safety manager. So we had a budget and we can do these things. We bought mats. I ordered mats, so ergonomic mats. Now we had exercise. Before you get into work, you do this for 5 minutes and do exercise, all kinds of exercise. Then you go to work. And then you're standing on your mats. And you're changing every 2 hours. People loved it. They were so happy. That's how I believe I kind of helped and empowered the women to become floor leaders. And that's how, and then, I don't know, maybe it's the next question, when now I'm going to attack City Hall.
You can start with whatever you want.
Okay, so then after that, I wasn't happy. I told you I wasn't happy with the city council, right? Because they didn't do much for us. Well, I don't know how I beat somebody that was going to become a Parks and Recreations. I want to start it small, build up. That's what I always do. I never go to the top. I always start. I want to learn all the steps. So Parks and Recreation was my thing right there. And I beat somebody that I thought for sure she had a strong name. I won't mention her name, but she was I thought for sure she was going to win, but nevertheless I tried and didn't give up. I got the position. And we worked on Parks and Recs. What I hated was that they did not have a skate a skate park for the kids. The kids were coming down Callahan Park and almost into the street, all the way into Brennan. We had to change that. We needed something, we needed a park. They cannot do that. And we got one. And then it took years because they had to be into program and progress and get the money and this and that, but we got it. And then also I told them about my kids. They were going to high school in EA Hall, and they had to cross St. Patrick's, you know, where St. Patrick's, there was a little store right there, Foster Freeze, but they used to sell tacos and stuff, and they used to jaywalk because there was no lights. You had to jaywalk 4 lines. How could the kids do that? So I had to befriend the planning commission on District 1. I had to befriend her to tell her, you know what, this is going on, and they're jaywalking regardless. There's no crosswalk, no nothing, and so they started looking at that. And then it didn't happen until one of my relatives got run over with her daughter.
No.
Yeah, it didn't happen until then. They didn't really realize it, and then that's when we really pushed it. Well, finally we got a light on St. Patrick's, and that was good. But sometimes you have to make friends with other people to get what you want, but then you become friends forever. It stays that way. So that was my 2 cents there.
Thank you, Paula. I'm going to repeat the question in case anyone else wants to answer. When did you first realize that you could help other people by advocating together? And what was that experience like?
I can talk a little bit about this. My nickname in high school, I was very low-key in high school. I wasn't popular or anything like that. But all of a sudden I became known as Condom Girl, and I'll tell you why. So in high school there was a nonprofit, doesn't exist anymore, it's defunct now, but there was a nonprofit that I volunteered at, and we had this newspaper, and it was like by teens and for teens, and we would make these articles. We'd write all the articles, we'd help in publishing it, and we'd go out and put the magazine or the newspaper everywhere. And then we also were like peer counselors, and one of our big projects that we did was we put condom vending machines in the teen hotspots. At the time, Watsonville had an incredibly high teen pregnancy rate, but we got a lot of pushback about these condom vending machines because people were like, oh, if they're there, the kids are going to have sex, and you're promoting sex, and blah blah blah. And we're like, listen, we're giving people choices, right? It's not only about pregnancy. There's also STDs. There's also STIs. It's the new terminology. But we want people to make informed and safe choices, and that's really what we're doing. And I was interviewed on TV, on the local news at the time, and this was like before social media. I'm very thankful for that. But I was interviewed, and I was like, we can't promote people being unsafe, and so we're trying to promote safer sex, and we're trying to bring down the teen pregnancy rate because so many girls were dropping out of school to take care of their kids, and we wanted to help lower that number. And so people saw it, and they were like, Condom Girl, it's you, I saw you on TV. So there's that story. But we actually did significantly help lower that teen pregnancy rate. And that's something that I'm really, really proud of. We worked super hard, and it was effective, right? We were helping people's health. We were educating our peers, and that was a really super powerful thing. So I think for me, that was really the first time when I felt like I actually made a difference, and that, it helped give me a voice, and it made me see, coming together for a cause, and when you have the community together, it's powerful, right? Even if there's people who are opposing you, you still have to stand your ground and fight for what's right. We want to have access to contraceptives. We want to have daycares for schools. We want people to go to school and not drop out because they have children, right? These were all these things that as teenagers we were pushing for because we saw the value in our peers getting educated. So yeah, for me that was really, really the first time. And I always had a big mouth. One of my friends in high school, she signed my yearbook and she said, Vanessa, you say everything that the world wants to say but is afraid to. And that's always been really true. So anytime I see something that's not right, I speak up. But really that experience in high school told me and taught me that you're so much more powerful when you're all together, right? When you have all these people together and you're working towards a common goal, you really can make a difference. And it was such a powerful moment and experience. And then, you know, when I learned that I could be a leader, it's kind of a silly thing, but I worked in a beauty shop. I sold a lot of like creams, like fancy creams and fancy makeup and things like that. So I did that during grad school to help pay for grad school. And I had somebody come in. We would get incentives from companies, right? If you're the top seller, you get prizes and things like that. And so I had, our store was the least populated store, and we also sold the least. And then I came on as assistant manager. I worked my way up to assistant manager, and all of a sudden our store was turning more than the stores in the ritzy areas, and that was like unheard of. It was a huge deal, and they were like, "How are you doing this?" And one of the reps came in and was like, "Oh, you're the top seller. You get to pick all this stuff." And I was like, "Okay." And so then I asked my team. I was like, "Hey, girls, what do you want to pick? Like, pick something. Everybody pick something." And the seller looked at me and was like, "That is so unusual." And I'm like, "What?" And they said, "Well, you know, at the other stores, the top seller, the girls always keep it for themselves." And I was like, which you can, you know, you can do that. But part of it was like making that cooperation, and you're a team, right? You reward your team and you lead. You don't want to be selfish. You don't want to do everything for yourself, right? If there's things that you can share, that makes your team follow you, and that makes your team motivated, and that's how we got those numbers. So that was sort of a pivotal point for me to realize, like, I can actually lead because I do it with heart and because I do it with caring about people, and that was something that I want to take with me in anything that I do. I teach, and you know, I've taken that into teaching and trying to be a human being, right, in teaching, and often it's just churning out grades and churning out things, but I want to connect with people and help them to get to where they are. So those are some crucial moments that kind of helped me, guide me, and have served me in good stead.
Yeah, I think we share a lot of the base concepts, which really it's about community and connection. The most powerful ways that we're able to, you know, take things further and do what we need to do is through community and connection. So I was thinking back about, like, okay, what are some things that kind of started that? And one thing came to mind is when I was in graduate school, we had a whole community, and we had this rife of security issues and safety. And so I held a potluck with our community of houses that was this little, I'm going to say there's like 14 houses all together. It was called Pomegranate Place. And so we started this conversation over food. And I think food binds people, food and time together, right? And so, and I'm a foodie, so anytime as I've looked forward, like later on when I was lived in Boulder Creek and I became the president of the Road Association, how I brought people together there was to say, oh, okay, we're going to have a potluck. And then instead of just putting a letter in people's mailbox, I walked to every house and I personally invited every person to come. And for the couple of years that I was the president, it brought people out, and actually we had a huge turnout of the community. And then the other thing too about being a mom, I think being a mom gives you that impetus to connect in a way that, you know, you see things from this level of nurturing. And it's kind of the way I think of our community is an extension of that. We have our kids and we nurture our kids, but we have to nurture each other in community as well. And I think as a community we can do just about anything. And a lot of the things that are very prescient to me right now, for example, is safe streets. We're in this time in our community where for some reason we value cars more than people's lives. And when I say we, the we is in quotes, right? Like each of us as an individual, we know that people's lives are more important than their cars. And yet the minute we walk out onto the street, the behavior is different. And so the question I have in my mind is, how do we together as a community solve this problem? And that's the only way that we're going to solve the problem, is as a community.
that we can come together, resonate with each other, touch each other, communicate with each other, and then commune together into solving the problem. And I guess that kind of answers the later question, but I've come to this realization that we've become so individualistic in our society that it's hurting us. You know, where my need to get somewhere fast because I'm in a hurry becomes more important than the pregnant mom walking her child or the 80-year-old woman who's walking to church. That my speed to get to where I need to go is more important. And that shifting of mentality, so I'm going to just go, it kind of addresses another question. How do we shift that mentality as a society from a need-focused society, independent, where my needs in the immediate time are more important than us as a community? And I wrote this little thing that came to my mind. For example, transportation serves to bring us together or drive us apart. So in our society right now, transportation can either serve to bring us together or drive us apart. And when we jump into a car and we're in our individual cars, and it's my 3,000-pound vehicle versus your 3,000-pound vehicle, and I'm getting to work and I'm going to get to work faster, that drives us apart. But when we're waiting together at a bus or a train stop, and we're talking, hey, how's your day? I didn't see you last week. Oh, my mom was sick. Oh my gosh. Then you hop on the train or the bus and you meet new people maybe you hadn't seen. Oh, I'm new in the neighborhood. Tell me more about yourself. When you go to other countries, that form of transportation brings us together. And we get to choose how we as a society want to move forward. Do we want to move forward in ways that bring us together or drive us apart?
Here's my next question. What do you find most encouraging about community organizing?
Since I was already kind of, but not really, because I like to work behind the scenes and everything I do. Like even the Peace and Unity March, I'm always behind the scenes, but I'm always doing something, contributing. And the same as the community, my kids were growing up. My letters to the editor were very, I would say they were powerful. I was young and I had a strong voice. and then Felipe was growing up and he saw all this in me taking over and doing things. He saw that, Robert saw this. And then when they grew of age, I told them, look, I want you to go to college and university. I want you to become someone and get a good job. Well, you have that opportunity. If you graduate from high school, I'll buy you a brand new car. That was their little carrot.
Theirs, not mine.
That was the carrot.
Worked.
So Felipe chose to go to combat, to the Army. That was his choice. We had to sign, my husband and me, because he was 17 when he graduated. So, okay, so, but he still got his car when he came out. He got his Mustang 5 point something, whatever. 5.0. And Robert, I gave him the same choice. Robert went to, from high school, went to the university. He didn't go to college to prep himself. Well, he didn't make it in the university. Came back, but it's okay. You can still go to school. You go, no, I want to work. I just want to work. Okay, fine, whatever you want to do, but you still get a car. So he got his car. And Sophia had the same option, my other daughter, and Angel. They did their own choices. I would just help them to whatever they wanted. Those are my kids, but as the community, you asked him about the community?
Yes, what do you find most encouraging about community organizing? Your favorite aspect?
Okay, I always like to help the person that is, there's a right and there's a wrong. I like to go to what the right is. But sometimes the right is the underdog and the wrong is the upper up. If the right is the underdog, I'll help them. I'll help them get up, up, up. I'll get help for that person to make him successful and beat the guy that's on the top. But this is the right guy and this is the wrong guy. Or the wrong issue and the right issue. So I love doing that. It's just, it's rewarding to myself. And at the long end, I think the community is the best choice for the community. I don't know, that's me.
All right, Paula.
I think when you do community organizing, you see people's excitement because I think it was Paula who said earlier, she did, or maybe it was you, or both of you, oftentimes you do things that other people want to do, but they haven't had the strength to step into that spot. And there's a lot of people that want to be a part of supporting the underdog. And we know that right now with our huge difference in incomes, right? Whereas at one time, you know, people who were janitors and farmers and mechanics could afford to live and buy a home and all of these things. 3 decades ago, now we're not in that place. We're in a place where the haves have more and more, and the middle and the people that don't have practically nothing, and it has become more of a struggle, right? So there's a lot of people who want to do these things, but don't have the time or the energy, or maybe they just don't have the self-esteem to take that step forward. But as a leader, you can say, hey, I'm gonna give some I'm going to step forward with you. We're going to do it together. And that's when that's when the magic happens, right? I may have an idea and be willing to put that idea out there, but there's a lot of other people that have that idea too, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to join with that idea, and then we all get together. And that's what's encouraging to me, is to see that power of the multiplicity of everyone who wants to do that thing. I mean, you think about Rail and Trail, right?
Right.
Felipe supports Rail and Trail. Our community supports Rail and Trail. I will be very honest, during that whole fight of Rail and Trail, I would talk to people and they would say, I really support Rail and Trail, but I can't talk about it. Because of, you know, either they were a part of an organization that was getting money from the wealthy people, and so they had to be quiet, or they were afraid to be too political. I got that from people. I can't be too political. I can't say anything. And I'm like, I have nothing to lose, you know? I'm not beholden to anybody. I don't sit on any council. I'm not working for high tech. I don't actually really care because it's the right thing to do. I need to take a stance for Rail and Trail. And then a lot of people who could do the same thing stood out and forward, and then the masses followed, you know, and you just get a lot of people who are like, thank you for doing that thing. And that's what it takes, right? People are afraid for so many reasons, and so that's what organizing and encouraging, you know, people to do, is it brings us together and lets us move through the fear, especially against powerful power mongers, if you will.
I think aside from the obvious of like winning or getting your goal or, you know, making change, those are all really good things. But I think my favorite part of organizing is, I don't really have a word for it, but I'm sure there's a word in German, because there's a word in German for everything. But it's just like that it's like a feeling that you get when everybody's like in it together. I'm not a movie person. I don't generally enjoy going to the movies. I like being at home so I can pause and get snacks and do all these things. But when people go to the movies, part of the reason that people like that is because you're experiencing this all together with other people, right? And so for me, I get that feeling, not from movies, but I get that feeling doing community work. And there's just like this, I don't know, this current of energy with people when you're like all together and you're all in community. And that's really my favorite part, is just that connection, that like thread that runs through everybody when you're like building momentum and you're working towards something together. It's just this incredible like kind of magical feeling that you get with people. And whether you meet the goal, whether you win or lose, doesn't really matter because you've made something there together. And it's just a really super beautiful thing. So that's probably my favorite part. And we're really lucky to have community, and that feeling, you'll feel that feeling if you've never felt it. If you've ever been in like a disaster or anything like that, that's that feeling, right? That feeling that everybody's pitching in and everybody's working together. It's just a really incredible thing. And so doing community work, like I get that feeling, right? And you can feel the vibes when people are working together, and when it's just creating relationships, and it's just building something that's strong, right? Building something that can't be bought, building something that can't be broken. And again, I don't know what the word is. I'll look it up. I'm sure there's a word in German. That's my favorite part.
Thank you.
Can I add something else?
Please.
I remembered something about what the superintendent, the head top from Birdseye Foods, I was standing there, I was supposedly a supervisor, the man's job, and I was up there looking at all the 6 lines going, and then he came up to me and we looked down, he goes, what are you feeling? Why are you looking that? And I looked at him, sir, looking at all these lines run at 130 minutes a box, a package, I get a high on it. I don't know, I just get a high on it. And he goes, can you imagine, all these machines are running 130 packages in 1 minute, and there's 7 lines. You don't need nothing but just to look at all these lines running. It just gives me a high. Then I'm gonna, and then, so then I started bringing, one time, I got girls to replace the machine operators, to replace them. I brought her up here, and I go, look at the 7 lines. What do you see? Oh my God, Paula, we're all running good. Production's good. Oh yeah. So I rotated people to get the same high I did. And I did this on all the lines, on the spinach, on the broccoli, on the cauliflower, on the lima beans, on the polybag. So this was all like a thing that I took a pleasure of, and I wanted them to take that pleasure too. That's all.
Thanks, Paula. I just have one last question, so thank you so much, panelists, but you could just just briefly answer, if you feel
Okay.
like it. This was my last one. When you're asking other people to join you, what helps them take that first step away from fear towards courage?
For me, before I do that, I have to have earned their respect and be approachable. And if it's a hard thing that we have to ask, you have to tell them what is the good and what is the bad, what is the balance of it. How do you see it? I ask them, how do they see it? How do you feel this way and that way? And then they tell me, well, I'm kind of afraid because I really don't want to lose this and this, but yet at the same time I want this, even though I'm not sure if I'm on stable ground. So that's the fear factor. And I tell them, well, they say that if we don't take a risk, we'll never know. Like, I should have married this man, I didn't. Now I'll never know. I married this one. But that's the risk you have to take. To me, I don't know. That's fine. You just have to earn the respect and tell them about the good and what they feel is good and what is bad, or what they feel is the most practical thing to do. That's how I.
I think getting people away from fear, I think there has to be the first one. You have to be the first one sometimes to do it. And, people are scared until they see that you can do it, or until they see like, oh, if this person did it, I can do it too, right?
Sure.
And that's sort of the first step, is like, you can, I'm doing it, like, join me. And so when people feel that there's like safety and that there's a blueprint and that there's community there, it's easier than being the only one. And so sometimes you got to be the first one to make noise. You have to be the first one to do the hard stuff. And even if you're not successful, even if you go into a room and lots of people don't like you, having, you have to do those things that are uncomfortable. And once you start leading by example, I think it gives people the courage to do it as well, and they want to back you and they want to join it because they feel the same way, and they might not want to speak up. Lonnie mentioned a little bit about that, right? People often don't want to be the first ones, and they don't want to be the only ones, and so sometimes it's, being the only one is that first step, and then people will follow, and that's really what I found.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true.
I think that's really the key of being a leader, and then I kind of asked myself the question, like, how do you get yourself through that fear? And sometimes that's really hard, right? But again, serving other people who want to take that role into the future. When I put on the Transit Equity Day in February, I know there were days leading up to that, the weeks. I was nauseous. I've never done this before, and I don't know if this is going to fail miserably. And I was really nauseous because of that. And it was a big event. I'd never done a county. It was the first county-wide event in the city of Santa Cruz. And so that was huge, right? It's being willing to take the risk of self, of being that first person to do that first thing. And I think painting a vision is really helpful as a leader. If you can have a vision first,
Right.
that you can then put your vision out there and share that vision with others, and they're like, yeah, do it. Yeah, go do it. And I'll help. Then you get that next step, right? Because then you get helpers that want to support that vision, whether it be safe streets or putting on an event or, I see us, we have to have bigger visions for our communities if we're going to even the playing field for labor, if we're going to bring safe streets to our community. We have to set the bars high for ourselves, set that vision, and then we bring the people into that vision. And what does that vision do is that they start to feel they get involved and they volunteer. And they're like, okay, this isn't so painful, and wow, look at what a great successful event we had, and yes, we won at the city, we got our vote. And then they have skin in the game. And once you get people to feel connected and have that skin in the game, they own it, right? And then I feel as a leader who took that first step, then it's, in a way, for me, my role to kind of step back and say, this is your thing, you are the community, I just set the spark, and now we as a community have to lead together. So you get people worked up, and that's getting them past the fear, right? So once they see it's possible, once they see the vision, well, in opposite order, they see the vision, they get involved, they see it's possible, and then they're motivated to take it as a community. I think that's it. I guess I was just going to plug for, someone mentioned earlier, nature. And I'm really big about, like, how does nature deal with any of this? I think it's really important to keep people involved in nature. And then the three biggies: transportation, housing, and access to opportunity through education. Those things are really key, making sure that our people are educated. It doesn't have to be college. I'm not like, oh, college is the only way. You can be educated in how to do, I mean, it's amazing that Paula came up with these strategies to help the people to make their lives easier. That's really critical, right? And how can we be better educated all these different ways to empower people to own their path in their future, to have opportunity. And that's really what this is all about, right? Giving people opportunity. And that's kind of what we've been losing in the past 3 decades, that access to opportunity. And how can we shift that back?
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to call on Felipe Hernandez.
I just want to say one of the reasons why I'm here to support Felipe is because Felipe is about service. And when we all come to the community in service to each other, that's where we're going to get to that next step. And I just want to honor Felipe as being a man of service to his community.
I just really want to thank everyone for being here and being part of this campaign. I want to thank my mother and the panelists too. And I want to say that every day that I go campaign and walk, I think my mother is part of it. Not just her going out there and campaigning, but every time I go knock on doors, no matter what district I'm in. Right now, I'm in Bay Village, and who would have thought, right, that there's cannery workers out there. Today, I met someone named Mary Ellen Martinez. Do you know who that is? She goes, I was talking, and there's 3 voters there, and I guess the husband, I guess she goes by Barnett now, Mary Ellen Barnett. But she goes, my original name is Martinez. And the husband's Republican. I was like, oh, okay. And so I knocked on the door, and she goes, are you Paula's son? I go, oh. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I work with 1,000 people at the cannery.
She goes, my name is Mary Ellen Martinez. That's my original name, but I'm good friends with their mother.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. Every day, there's people that I know, every day I find somebody that my mother knew and is friends with my comadre, with my mom. But she gave me her number, cell phone number, and she told me to give it to you. She goes, I remember your mom and Sandra Perez. And
Yeah.
I was like, all right, so I'm going to give you her number later. But, thank you, It's every day, I think my mother's part of my campaign. More than, just walking, but just who you are, Mother.
Yeah. 1,000 people work there.
Yes. And so thank you for that. But I also want to acknowledge, just people that were part of my life, women that were part of my life that shaped me and made me who I am as well. I think that as a young person, when we started organizing as young people, there's people like Barbara Garcia at Salud para la Gente that were part of me and Luisa's lives that shaped us and made us who we are. There was people that when we were organizing as young people back in 93, 94, that people didn't want to step out of boundaries or step out of lines, but Barbara Garcia made sure that we were able to organize and let us in to meet and have a meeting space, a space at Salud para la Gente for young people that wanted to organize and that wanted to do walkouts and to organize. And so she let us use that space. And so I commend her, and she was a mentor for us. And I think that she was probably one of the first people that in 93, 94 that ever talked to us about, me and Luis and different young people in 93 about LGBT issues back then, And so for me, it was a young age for me right after the Army, And so I commend her, and she really molded who I am, and she became a big leader in healthcare, in public health issues. Shirley Flores Munoz in Cabrillo College, when I took La Mujer, she really mentored me. Always pulled me aside. She goes, "Hey, you're the only guy in the class. You're the only guy in the class actually this whole year, because it was the second semester." And she goes, and so we were talking, and I forgot what we were talking about. I was talking about organizing and stuff, and she goes, you should have been born in the 60s. You remind me of old soul of the 60s. But since then, we really got along up until this day. She's a big supporter. And Ana Ventura Fares, and I have to throw 2 names at the same time for this one, or 3 names actually. Danya Torres Wong and Sayo Fujioka, There's a group of people back then called Poder Latino that me and Luis got involved with. It was our first group that we ever did political organizing, community organizing. I was like 23 or something. And so, it was our first, was the Southwest Voter Registration project that we did. So it was my first time actually, doing a conference for Southwest Voter Registration, doing a voter registration project in Watsonville. We registered, almost 300 people in Watsonville. So for me, those are, people that really mentored me, that were leaders, that really showed me a lot about community organizing as well. And for me, that's really who I am, and it's part of my life. And I have to mention a few other people that weren't from this community, but that really just, I would have to say, broke me down and built me up, almost like drill sergeants. They're part of SEIU. And when you see them, they're really like 5'2", 5'1", small little women, Filipino women. But Mai Crispin and Grace Vergara, Mai Crispin was the lead director for all of the public sector, organizing director, all the public sector for SEIU. So anything public sector was Mai Crispin. She was 5'2", 105 pounds, but the best organizer that you've ever seen, you know, anywhere. And so she really showed me a lot about, like, not community organizing, but union organizing. And she'd call me Felipe, almost with a P, not with an F, almost with an, and she was like, Felipe, come here, go ahead. You do your list, and I want you to talk to all the workers. We had to do all the organizers had a whole wall with a list of all the workers. And she said, I want you to talk to all these workers, and I want you to get all the lists and all their phone numbers and all their work times. I'm like, Mai, how am I going to do that? You're going to talk to the workers. All right, this is like, and you know, she really drove me and pushed me the hardest that I ever been pushed. Like, that's why I said she was almost like a drill sergeant, but it wasn't physical, but it was mental pushing me. And same with Grace Vergara. She's the director of the, I think, West Coast Health Director for SEIU. And you know, those two women were my biggest mentors to really push hard in organizing, community organizing, union organizing, but really taught me a lot about life. And that's what I have to say is that, you know, just the whole attitude about suck it up and drive on and just push forward and just the grind and to push forward. Those two women were really my mentors, you know, and so I really give it to them. They really forged a new Felipe Hernandez in me. And, you know, I have to say also, you know, really the leaders also is, of course, my mother, you know. My mother's the biggest person that really shaped who I am. You know, I always share the story with people of, you know, when she was organizing with the union, and one of the biggest, you know, things that I always keep in my mind is when she was organizing and when she talked about, you know, doing the food drives and stuff like that. And I remember when we were at this, you know, there's a Cardenas market, but it used to be a Lucky's shopping center and the little grocery store. And on Freedom Boulevard, yeah, right across the street from the county health center. And she went there, and I was like a 5th grader, and I just went with her. And I remember her talking to the workers at the Lucky Shopping Center, and I guess she got, you know, the time that the truck deliveries are coming. And she went out there, talked to all the truck drivers that were coming, and it was all the frozen foods that were coming. She talked to the truck drivers, and of course they're all Teamsters. And she got the truck drivers, the delivery drivers that are bringing all the frozen foods, to drop off all the food on Freedom Boulevard. Instead of taking it into the store, they dropped it off right on the sidewalk. And of course the UFCW workers weren't going to pick it up. They're going to let it there thaw out. And later on they called all the workers from Shaw that, hey, we got some food, you know, let's go pick it up. And they went to go pick it up later on. But for me, I thought that was solidarity, right? The Teamsters, UFCW working together, my mom making this happen. And for me as a young 5th grader, I thought, man, my mom made this happen, you know? That's what solidarity is. And when I think about, when people talk about Watsonville being a union town, I always think about that moment in time when my mother made that happen. And so that's what I think about when my mom, you know, and that, for me, that's leadership, you know? My mom is leadership. And so I always think about people like my mom, Miss Betancourt, that recently passed away, Gloria Betancourt, Reina Hernandez, that recently passed away, one of our friends, actually all our friends, mothers that passed away, Beatrice and Ivan's mom that passed away, Hernandez. Reina Guzman,
Reina Guzman.
that passed away, and Miss Betancourt. And they always used to teach me and Louise too about stuff, you know. And there's a famous picture of Miss Betancourt flipping off the police too. I don't know if you guys ever seen it. There should be t-shirts made, you know, of this picture. I think I sent it to you.
you sent it to me.
Yeah, I think I sent it to you. There should be t-shirts made of that shirt, but she's flipping off the police right in front of the church over here. Should be like a punk rock t-shirt or a heavy metal t-shirt, you know? Rage Against the Machine t-shirt or something like that. But, you know, that's what I want to thank, you know. And, you know, this event was about the women thing, not as much as the campaign, but I really, you know, people mentioned about bike and pedestrian safety, but that is a huge issue to me. You know, back in 2015, before I was mayor, I started the road, you know, Lowell, and was part of it back then. And we started the whole path to bike and pedestrian safety. And the county bike and the county Vision Zero committee actually came over to Watsonville because we started the Vision Zero movement in Watsonville before any other city in the Central Coast. City of Watsonville was the first city to enact a Vision Zero policy, in the first city in the Central Coast. Before Santa Cruz, before Monterey, before anywhere in any of these cities. And what that is anywhere that there's multiple accidents or serious injuries or fatalities, we have to enact the 6 E's now, back then it was only 3 E's, but enact engineering, education, enforcement, yes, into that area to make sure that, and engineering means changing the way the road flows. So if there's like roads that naturally people cross, but there's no crosswalk, but naturally people cross, we have to engineer a crosswalk there. And I bring that back because there's a good friend of ours that was a long-time United Farm Workers organizer. And we all know, let's give a round of applause for the bill that just passed for United Farm Workers. There's a long-time union organizer, Don Adan.
Oh, yeah.
And he was going to work like at 6 in the morning and over on the Safeway, and there was no crosswalk. And I always told our city manager back then, anywhere that there's a bus line and there's a busy intersection and there's a busy area that they're gonna go to, you have to do a crosswalk. Nobody's gonna walk like a whole block just to cross back over there and then come back all the way over there. It's like, you know, the flow of water, right? People are gonna do the most natural and easiest thing. And so we have to design our intersections that way. Just the way we design our roads for cars, we have to design our roads for pedestrians and bicyclists. And so we never did it. And sure enough, you know, this poor, like 83, he got run over and he got killed. And, you know, sure enough, sadly, you know, the intersection, the flash beacon crosswalk happened after the fact. We put it on there. But, you know, we have to be more proactive. And we did the Vision Zero afterwards. We passed we did it, we started the whole process in 2015. We passed the resolution in 2016. And in 2018, we passed the entire resolution to make it official as an ordinance. So thank all the council that you know made it part of the campaign. And one of the things I want to make sure happens is that because that campaign at the county started before ours. They started in 2014, and ours started in 2015. And I want to make sure that we pass the Vision Zero ordinance at the county level to make sure that we have safe streets, walkable streets for our county. So that's only campaign. Also this. So thank you everyone for showing up, and thank you to the panelists. Any short statements for the closing panelists?
It's very short. The one thing I do regret, Barbara came to my house. Barbara was a friend of mine because I told her I was very upset with the city hall. ¿Cómo se llama the one that did the 7 districts? Barbara Gomez?
Cruz Gomez.
Cruz Gomez.
Cruz Gomez.
Cruz Gomez. She came to me and we became friends, and she said she wanted to drop Watsonville into 7 districts because we were not being represented right, and you know it because you went to city council, asked for help, they didn't help you. Guess what? We got to change this. Now I'm working on this project to make the districts, and I want you to help me. That's what I that's what I regret. I wasn't able to help her. I was working 2 jobs at that time. And I told her, but you know what, Cruz, whenever you are hungry, I want you to come to my house. Whenever you need to go to the bathroom because you're going here and there and doing everything, this is your house. My house is your house. Come to my house. She did pit stops right here at my house. That's the only way I could help. But that's what I regret, that I wasn't able to get in there and fight with her.
Briefly, I just wanted to thank Maylene for organizing this event.
Thank you.
I want to thank Judy G for giving us the